Hello and welcome to another Founder and Friends. My name is John Daniel Trask, and today I am joined by my good friend Sumitra Manga. Hi, Sumitra.
Hi JD, how's it going?
Pretty good. I've been looking forward to this one for a little bit. I don't think we've had a Founder and Friends so far this year, but we have recently launched support for integrating Teams with our alerting product, and Sumitra led the work on that. And so today we're going to be having a little bit of a look at that integration, but also more broadly around alerting. Is that right, Sumitra?
Yes, that's correct.
Cool. Now we were talking beforehand, and I know, it's called Founder and Friends. We like to make sure that people understand the individual. So you're a huge fan of M&M, I
Yes,
hear.
yes, I am. I made it in the top 0.3% of his list.
I would have never picked that prior to this, but yeah. I guess just setting a little bit of a scene here. So Sumitra joined Raygun a few years ago. She came from a school called UB and has been an awesome software engineer on our team. She's very quickly risen up the ranks and is currently running several of our teams at Raygun. So awesome work on that. And I'd love to talk a little bit more about sort of team lead type work near the end of this session. Does that work for you too?
Yep.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I'm not going to do too much of the talking here on at least for the first part anyway, while we do a bit of a demo. So why don't we talk through a little bit about the alerting workflows and things like that and why they're useful?
Yeah, definitely. I think basically from being able to reduce your mean time to resolution, I think that's super important in terms of having a seamless automation flow. And I think alerting, and I even use this as well when I am developing features within Raygun, is that using alerting and getting notified in real time has helped me save so much time and just so much of that hassle of being able to figure out, when's this error going to come through, or when is the error going to come through. And I think Raygun does a pretty good job at having that feature in place. And it's kind of like we're using we almost use alerting for alerting as well, like how we use Raygun for Raygun. So
I've always loved that idea, though, that with time, like the answer to one of the questions of why has Raygun done well as an organization, and I really want the answer to partly be because we use Raygun. Something about the nerd in me just loves recursion, but you're absolutely right. That mean time to resolution is important. The way that we've sort of philosophically approached building software at Raygun, and it's probably especially pertinent now in the age of AI tools, is I love the idea of when we even at Raygun using external vendor products, I love it to feel like there's a virtual team member, the one that's kind of got my back, telling me when something's up. And really, that's what the alerting capabilities of Raygun do today. Keeping you well informed, like you say, we do actually monitor Raygun with Raygun, so the alerting system alerts us when it's got issues, which makes sense. But also, we see a lot of those common tasks that people do, like, for example, push out a new deployment and want to be able to say, hey, has there been a regression in the newest release? Something we can go and proactively action now. And that's always a really, really valuable place to go and be proactive, because typically when you regress something or you've created an issue with a new release, the context of that problem is already in the minds of the software team, so, or to use more computer speak, it's already loaded into RAM. It's much quicker to go and sort of access that information and fix the bug in real time rather than, waiting till later. But anyway, I know we want to do a demo today, Sumitra.
yes, that's great.
We always love a live demo. That's cool. All right, we've switched it over. Here's one you've prepared earlier.
Yes, definitely. Cool. So we'll just hop straight into it. So I'm just going to head into our alerting feature within Raygun and just go ahead and set up a new alert just so that we can go ahead and actually target Microsoft Teams and be notified there. So I'm just going to call this alert part errors.
Yeah. And for those of you who have been using Raygun for many years, the alerting capabilities was really us opening up the flexibility around when we would tell you about faults or performance issues. Historically, we had some defaults in there that we called smart alerts. They were reasonably smart, but they're definitely not as capable as this new alerting infrastructure.
That's right, JD. And you can create so many alerts based on all these options that we have right now. It may seem like there's not too many, but the opportunities I feel like are endless just from what you can see here. So I'm just going to go ahead and add in my web store production application. And just so I can get the targeted alerts, targeted errors coming through from there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Sorry.
No, that's all right. One
Vex,
of the, oh, sorry. Yeah.
then you're all good. Go ahead.
I was going to say, just while you're looking for it there, the way I tend to personally think of the alerting capabilities within Raygun is more along the lines of an automation engine. So Raygun receives this amazing stream of data around faults, performance measures out of RAM and APM, and the question then becomes, what do you do with it? This is effectively stream processing sitting on top of that. And so we're continuing to make investments in this area. Obviously, today we're going to be talking about Teams specifically, but we love hearing feedback in this area, and it's an area we're continually upgrading and improving.
Definitely.
Cool.
Cool. And so we're just going to have a condition added to this alert, and I'm just going to target the condition as error instance occurs. So I'm going to want to be alerted when one error instance occurs within 1 minute. So this will probably go off quite a lot if you are actually using this in production. But depending on your use case, you would actually want to use this. And I'm just going to go ahead and add an action to be notified via Microsoft Teams. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And currently, I haven't actually set up Microsoft Teams as a plan integration. So I'm just going to go ahead and go through, which will open me up in a new tab and automatically direct me to the plan integration section, which is also a new area within our app. You can obviously see Slack here as well, and you can add Microsoft Teams, which is our new addition.
Yeah, let's talk about that just for a moment. Again, for longer term Raygun customers, you'll know that we integrate with quite a lot of products, about 30 different ones out there. We're making the shift slowly to bringing those integrations up to the whole plan level. Previously, they were configured on a per application basis. And while some folks do have a need to specify different, say, Slack or Teams integrations on a per app basis, for the most part, customers want to be able to set up the integration once and then use it across all of the apps. So that's where we're shifting some of these things up to that level.
Exactly, and they're currently still coexisting, both app level and plan level integrations as well. We're just making a slow transition, and while people still have app level integration still in place for Slack, for example, we want to give them the opportunity to transfer over to the new plan integrations level, which is more diverse in terms of using it within the alerting space. So I'm just going to go ahead and set up our Microsoft Teams plan integration. And from here, this will actually open me up the desktop application for Microsoft Teams, which I don't want to do at the moment. I just want to go ahead and click cancel and use their web app instead. And this will redirect me back into the Microsoft Teams workspace.
Now, when we were preparing for this demo, Sumitra, we had a good chat, didn't we, about a potential ideal customer who may benefit from performance monitoring tools. As we watch this loading and script loading and another spinner and another spinner, this is an interesting point while we're waiting for this, is performance is absolutely a feature. There's a comment from Jeff Bezos where he says, how do we predict the future? And he says, that the important thing to do is not to think about what will change, but think about what won't change. And that's where performance is really a key thing. Nobody is ever going to want their software to load slower to make them wait longer. Performance is 100% a feature. And in fact, it's a feature that very, very few organizations take seriously, and it can be a huge win. Teams is actually fairly well known for being slow, and I know that they've recently updated the desktop app, and I think it still takes 9 seconds to load, and that's a huge win. So anyway, not here to be too mean to Teams, but
to be fair, I've just opened Microsoft Teams now, and I can hear my computer fan going off.
Yeah, and if you could just. Do you just want to straighten the mic slightly there, Sumitra? I think it's clicking a wee bit. No, that's all good.
That's all good.
Cool.
I'm just going to add the Raygun application to a specific team. So I'm just going to go ahead and add in team 1 for my car errors production channel, and go ahead and set up the Raygun bot for that. This is just so it knows what channel we, as Raygun, want to target in terms of where you want to get your errors through, and Microsoft will also know where to listen out to as well.
Yeah, and I think it was probably in the first Founder and Friends with Seeing where she talked about the ways that a lot of our customers track errors. And I guess in your example here, you're talking about a cart. And we see that a lot with particularly e-commerce customers, is putting tags on important flows within your website, whether it's checkout process, maybe the sign up process, those real critical points in your own funnel. It's useful to tag or segment the errors in there because, as you can imagine, errors that are occurring at the point where somebody's trying to purchase something have, a direct correlation to economic impact on the business. And as much as that sounds like, hey, we're just focusing on the business, we've all been in that case as consumers when you've decided to buy something and you can't complete the purchase. It's like, I want to give you money and it's not working. So in this demo, you've segmented that down to just the errors coming from a mythical cart. This is a demo app, is that right?
Yeah, this is just a demo app. So any data you see here is actually just fake data as well, by the way.
Yeah, cool.
Cool. So yeah, the Raygun bot has actually prompted us to complete our setup. This is just so that, again, we know what specific plan we want to be targeting in Raygun. So I'm just going to go ahead and select my plan here and enable Microsoft Teams for that. And following on, I should now hopefully see that the integration is set up. Here we go. So you can see that the Microsoft Teams integration at plan level has been set up successfully. So I'm just going to go ahead and get out of this tab here and close some tab here and pop back into alerting. And you can see here that this section has slightly changed, and you can now actually select a channel and also be able to see what team you are in or what team you are integrated with, because you may come back again, you may have several teams within MS Teams and not know where the channels are coming from specifically because it may have similar channels. So I'm just going to go ahead and select my cart errors production that I want to target and create the alert and just double check that everything looks okay on the read-only view alert screen. Yep, I'm pretty happy with that. Cool. So that's the alert setup, and I'm just going to go ahead and just trigger a crash report manually, just so I can get some errors piping through to actually get the actual alert coming through. So I'm going to go ahead and do that.
Yep. You wouldn't write normal bugs, so you've got to simulate them.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point earlier. You were talking about every error that occurs, and that's one of the benefits of the alerting capabilities here is, if you're a brand new startup that's adopting a crash reporting type product, maybe every single error you should be told about because you can action that and keep on top of it. And we've seen that even billion-dollar companies today that adopted Raygun when they were just starting out, and they keep their error volume super low through their whole company life cycle. Similarly, we've had some very large customers with hundreds of millions of users adopt Raygun. And in those situations, it may be that they need tens of thousands of faults for it to be a priority to fix. Obviously, we'd love to see people fix all faults, but having that ability to configure the sensitivity based on the organization size and the use of the software is really important for getting a control on the quality.
Exactly. And just as a side note as well, I've used our API reference for crash reporting. So you can actually trigger the any kind of crash report that you want based off of what you put in the body of the request. I'm just going to go ahead and quickly show you in our documentation. This one's not a part of our recent API that we have popped out. This has been existing for quite a while, and it's been really useful, especially when I'm developing as well. You could probably use it more on the automation side of things if you don't want to, if you prefer to be using that over our providers. Yeah.
This is effectively the raw API endpoint for ingesting a crash report. So this is showing what format we would expect the JSON data. Now, most customers and users would be using one of our SDKs, and so probably never deal with the JSON data. But this is the structure here, and you'll know that if you go into an error group within Raygun Crash Reporting, you can actually see an example JSON blob for every message you send to us. And so you could also pull that out, which might make it easier to simulate data being sent through.
Yeah, and it's quite simple as well. All you have to do is pop this in the body and also pop in the headers your API key as well and post it to api.raygun.com/entries. So hopping back into the app, you can see that I got some errors popping through. And if I hop back into Microsoft Teams, there we go. We've actually got our alert triggering, and you can see how actionable it is because we just get the information that's important straight up to us, such as the error group. So I can just hop in here and check out what the specific error group is and get all the information before I start to diagnose into the issue further.
Yeah, and that chat ops, as it used to be called, I haven't heard it so much recently, is the way we sort of do deal with some of these things at Raygun, and we see a lot of customers doing this. And this is why the Teams integration is so important, is it's usually handy to have your team wire up Raygun into Teams or a Slack channel or similar, and then they're able to see these messages, click through and get the context, but they can also comment and discuss them in real time and sort of help an engineering team or broader product team quickly decide, is this an urgent fix or something that can feed into our normal workflows and things like that. More than a few times at Raygun with monitoring Raygun, this is exactly how we've had times where we've looked at something on, that's strange, only to find, some significant other issue that we need to go and resolve. So, yeah.
Awesome. And I will just point out as well, if you happen to be across the team quite a lot in terms of what kind of integrations they are popping through into Microsoft Teams, you will be notified via the general channel when the Raygun integration has been set up successfully. Instead of popping it through the channels, this is just to make sure that everyone is aware across the business. And obviously, if you happen to set up for the wrong plan as well, the wrong Raygun plan, you can just pop in within the app section of Microsoft Teams and just delete the integration from there and just go through the same process that you would as if you were setting up Microsoft Teams from the start.
Awesome. That's cool. So this has been a pretty easy, straightforward demo here of the value of integrating with Teams off alerting. Let's shift gears slightly, shall we, Sumitra, and talk about the actual build of this capability. Yeah, so I'll put my hand up. For those who don't know me super well, I have a background in software engineering, although I do lead the company today, so I don't write too much code day to day. And I remember looking at this and hearing, okay, we need to integrate with Teams. And I thought, sure, Slack was quick to integrate with, so how long should this project take? And then what did you find, Sumitra?
Well, we did as a team do quite a bit of discovery in terms of what process we need to take on. Most of the development teams saw that, okay, this should be as simple as Slack. We still have to go through the review process, which is totally fine. And we still have to set up all the workers and all the necessary pieces to combine together in order to make the integration. However, we did actually underestimate how long it would take during, which we discovered actually during our discovery phase, which was really good because then we were able to update our stakeholders. So there was quite a bit involved in terms of the review side. Microsoft are quite rigorous in terms of exactly how they want their content, how they want things to be built out, and also just how they want to be, I guess, marketing as well, the integration itself. So there's a lot of practices and processes involved on their end and just making sure we are aligning with their standards rather than over our standards. But with the help of the documentation, being able to reach out to the support team, and actually also even having a contact that JD had where the company actually happened to have released their own Microsoft Teams integration. I think overall it went pretty well, but it was definitely a very large process to get through, but lots of key takeaways from there and lots of learnings that we can definitely take into our next round as well.
Yeah, and a big shout out to Phil Howie from Onwardly, who built a security product, who was the external party that just built their Teams integration. And so we had a good chat with him and he kind of gave us that guidance. I think, I've talked about the slowness of Microsoft Teams a little bit today. So I think it's worth also acknowledging that support team and the engagement we had through that was really, really useful, very engaged, quite prompt in terms of turnaround times, was helpful. But it did take a lot longer at the pure technology level. The way that a Teams integration works is quite different to the way a Slack integration worked. I believe if you were to build a full bot for Slack, it's probably fairly similar, but just to post a message and say, hey, here we are, is quite complex. one thing as well we haven't touched on today, Sumitra, was we already had an integration, didn't we?
This was for the Slack
Teams.
integration? Teams
No,
integration.
for Teams. Yeah,
Yes,
what was
that's
that about?
right. Oh my gosh. So there's actually there was actually already an app called Raygun, which had our logo and everything. It was using webhooks as well, and it was just using a real basic model of a notification system. And that was not actually created by us, surprisingly. It was created by Microsoft Teams. So there was a lot of like back and forth going on there to make sure like, hey, like we actually need that Raygun name for our own integration and our own app in the marketplace that they offer. So there's a lot of back and forth on that part as well, and trying to make sure like we don't confuse our own customers with which Raygun app it also was. So we had to pop it down and make sure it's a legacy app. I think till this day, I think that app still exists, but only in certain areas, such as if you try and look it up within the apps section within Microsoft Teams for the desktop application, it still shows up there, but it should not show up in the, I believe, appsource.microsoft.com. So it's still a bit of back and forth. It looks like on their end, but yes, hopefully it's not too confusing for our customers in terms of which application they should be downloading.
Yeah, and that's been around a long time, that integration. I think Microsoft must have built it when they were trying to build up their example of lots of integrations. If you are using that older one, though, you will want to shift to the newer one. It has more capability, more detail in there, much more manageable, and follows all the current standards that are in there. So that'll work. I will share this just because I thought it was funny, which was the cycle of saying, well, you need to contact the author and ask them to take it down, and saying to Microsoft, yes, well, you are the author. And it's like, yes, you need to contact them. It's like, but it's you.
Yes,
so that was a few cycles, but we got there.
Yes.
But yes, the new one's amazing, which is really cool. Is there anything else, if somebody else was building an integration today with Microsoft Teams, Sumitra, is there any pointers you would provide to them?
Ooh, I think the main thing is not directly related to building Microsoft Teams, but more just being involved in any project, because I feel like over communicating has been such a huge part in making the project successful all the way to delivery, and ensuring the developers themselves and the whole project team were actually pretty well settled and felt motivated to keep moving forward and keep persevering whilst we were getting through the process of Microsoft Teams. So making sure that you just over communicate is, I feel like, super helpful, and stakeholders are happy because they have been told in advance. So everyone is all around very understanding. But on top of that, I feel like if you are working directly with the Microsoft Teams integrations and you're building your own piece, I would say definitely read up on their documentation in terms of the review process, and maybe even just go out and find someone that has built the Microsoft Teams integration themselves, so they can actually provide you the advice. Since they have actually gone through the whole process, they've gone through several review steps in terms of what they need to go back with again. So that will be, it will save you a lot of time. It saved us, I think, about 2 weeks, I would say, of review of the review period. So we actually released 2 weeks earlier than we had initially thought.
Yeah, then that was great. To that end as well, if there is a customer that is building an integration, would like more of a one-on-one, you probably know our style of wanting to go above and beyond on all of our support. So Sing Out would be happy to have a one-on-one chat about how we did that, and some of the other deeper technical gotchas in there. You're right, though. Sumitra, I mentioned at the start, is one of our superstars at Raygun. She's leading a few teams and getting things done. And that point about communication is a really good one, because one of the things I sort of look at is like, what makes an effective leader, and your communication has been absolutely phenomenal through this, and that has been, time and time again, as you use that word, over communicate, and just being really clear across the team about the status of things. Similarly, we run a process internally where if we're tracking something well, it's green. If it's at risk, it's orange, and if it's off track, it's red. Pretty common traffic light system. I was thinking about this last night, and one of the things I recognized in the way you operate your team, Sumitra, is not being afraid of when that thing goes orange or red. It's just a fact. It's the nature of what it is. It's not a case of trying to sort of maybe hide it away. There's no value in that. It's just, it is what it is, and everybody being in sync is really powerful. One of the other areas that you've helped not just at Raygun per se, but we obviously love supporting the broader community, and you've helped us many times with our interaction within schools, within universities, and things like that. I'd love it if you could talk a wee bit about what drives you to do that, and any tips for other people that are thinking about how to make a bit of a splash with the local community.
Yeah, so you can probably see I had like an even bigger smile on my face after you mentioned that. Because yeah, I'm pretty passionate about being able to inspire young individuals, people that are just studying and trying to get involved into the tech industry and dip their toes in that space. And I feel like when I was studying, I actually was lucky enough to get an opportunity to be able to come into the ray gun space as a student and being able to discover who the engineers are and what they actually do in their daily lives. Whereas previously, I wasn't actually getting that exposure, and I can see how other students as well that possibly didn't attend UB, where I studied, they probably wouldn't have got that exposure as well to understand what the industry is currently like and also what they are working on in their day-to-day jobs as an engineer, for example. So I was quite privileged in that space, and I just want to be able to pass that on to future graduates and being able to help them, because this is the only, I thought this is one of the ways that is a powerful way to be able to get them involved and get them keen and inspired to join the tech industry. And it doesn't take much time either out of my part, I feel like it. And if you're passionate about it, it doesn't feel like a drag. If anything, it's something that you look forward to doing. And even just waking up the next day on the presentation day, it just feels very positive. And yeah, it makes me want to just keep forward and being able to uplift other people and see them succeed in terms of students and how they want to get into the tech industry.
I think that's awesome, and that's something I'm really proud that we can support well at Raygun. That young people thing is really important, I think, partly because it's fairly still misunderstood about the opportunity that actually exists in tech, from sort of the high school, basically at school, pre-university. A lot of people don't really learn how to code or do those things, and I think I don't know about your story so much here, Sumitra. I'd love to hear it, but to me, it was finding that magic of the first time I got some code going and being like, "Whoa, this is actually quite cool. I can do some interesting stuff here," and helping people, and then sort of see that there's an amazing career doing exactly that was really powerful. What was sort of your story, and what do you like to do in terms of creating that connection for students?
Yeah, I think mine started way back. Like I remember having a Windows 98 computer, something like in the 90s, that my dad had purchased, and we would play so many games on there, and just all sorts of different games. I think one of the main ones was definitely Grand Theft Auto on my part, and I don't know why my dad let me play that game, but to be fair, I did not understand any of the dialogue. I was just there trying to get cars to drive them around. Didn't even care about the missions or anything like that. But anyways, there's also really other awesome fun games as well on there. I can't remember the names of them, but I just remember it was similar to Mario.
Yeah.
And yeah, it kind of just started from there, from a user perspective. I was like, this is pretty cool. Like, how do they actually build these technologies and being able to get into that space? So I didn't necessarily go into the game development side, but I did want to get into more of the web development side because I'm quite a visual person and I've always enjoyed the aspects of seeing how to see things visually. So I guess in high school as well, I was quite keen on graphic design, but at the same time, I was also taking a computer course. So I was also like, wow, this is so cool. Like I can just type a bunch of code and I get this really awesome thing appearing on the screen. So I had a little bit of a tossing and turning on like, what way do I want to go? Eventually at UB, which I was quite grateful for, I was able to get a bit of both and then kind of specialize more into one of the different areas, like still being able to get on the front end side, which I definitely appreciate still, but also being able to get in the nitty gritty of the code, and also even non-visual stuff, which I think has been very insightful and interesting to learn about, such as the backend space.
Yeah, I've often felt that I'm sure this applies for almost every role in the world, but people love to sort of go deep in an area, and become a specialist. And we talk about generalists, but I think there's sort of this third category, which is people that have a passion about multiple domains. meaning, for example, for you, there's programming, and then it was very noticeable that design and user experience piece. And so it's really noticeable, again, sharing an inside Raygun type story here of how often folks like yourself and others that are similarly multi-talented are kind of saying, hey, this thing over here doesn't make any sense, or I don't like this looks kind of wrong, and yet normally the narrative, and I hate to say it to our fellow dear engineers, is, oh, the engineers don't necessarily notice or care as much about the design side. And so that's where I think that's a huge win for somebody who's kind of sometimes, maybe as a younger person, you're worried you need to make a decision that one area is where you need to place your bet, when in reality it's kind of the ability to have a diverse skill set actually makes you a bit of a unicorn, which I think is really cool and something we should talk about more. So that's been great for getting to schools. Have you got any tips and tricks? If somebody out there is watching this and thinking, man, we should be more engaged in the community, how have you found that? Because I know we've had some challenges there, so we won't.
I personally just email the schools and the tertiaries in terms of who would be keen, and there'll be quite a few people that just don't reply back at all, or some people that will reply back and try and set something up but doesn't go all the way. And I usually just keep trying. It's more successful if you have a good connection with someone. I felt like I had a connection with UB, even though I didn't know all the tutors there. I knew one tutor which passed me on to a different tutor, which I think helped in the sense of being able to find a class to speak to. And even if there are students out there as well, I guess it kind of dips into making sure it's okay to talk to the students and all that. But sometimes students will pop back to us as well and be like, hey, like, we have this code club, like, how would you like to come and present a little talk to us? And you can it's probably like a more in a professional manner, you can go through the certain code clubs that are out there at the moment. So for example, in New Zealand, we have a code club. They have their own website, and you can go through there and just pick whatever area you want to be being involved in. The organisers of the code club can help you out as well and give you that connection with the school and yourself as a company.
Yeah, cool. So Code Club is a New Zealand specific organisation. So if you were curious to just see what it looks like, even if you're overseas, just Google Code Club New Zealand and it'll give you some examples. But there will be similar programs in other areas, and it's a great way to interact. We did just have a little bit of a dropout there, I think, in your connection, Sumitra. So it might be time that we shift a little bit to some of the Q&A. And so I've got a few questions that have been popping through here. I'll read them to you. So yeah, please post on any of the social channels if you'd like to ask us any questions. Can be about the Teams integration, can be about some of the team lead related things, could be the community side. So we've already got a few here, and I'll ask them first here. Can people or teams be mentioned in Microsoft Teams as part of the alert, or do we manage that after the alert lands in Microsoft Teams from Facebook? So I'm picking this means, if an alert had an @ mention of somebody's name, will that tag them, or does somebody need to go into Teams and maybe tag, @ Sumitra, can you go look into this?
Yeah, I think, excuse me, I think so at the moment we only have it set up based on the information you provide from the alerting alert that you've made. So currently it's just the alert name, the error group that comes through, and also any filters that you have in place, such as tags. So at this stage, there's no @ mentions, but yeah, that could be a potential feature that we could even pop in through if it gets enough votes.
Yeah, and to that end, now is a great time to provide feedback on that integration. I made that reference earlier to being aware when a fault occurs on a new release and saying, hey, well, it's fresh in your mind. The team's integration work at the moment is still very fresh in the team's mind. I've been doing sort of those follow-up polish tasks. So any and all feedback is greatly appreciated at the moment.
Yeah,
all right, well, great.
This is just also MVP as well. So yeah, obviously we are looking to enhance it a bit further, and alerting itself as well. It's still in its early stages, even though it's quite advanced as is. Obviously we are still looking for feedback on that part.
Yeah, it's getting quite crazy. We did an earlier episode where you look at things like hooking the webhooks up to Zapier and doing
Yes.
things like, writing into docs and, heaven forbid what happens when you end up with a ChatGPT plugin that can kind of start doing things based on your software quality. Anyway, we'll keep going with some of these questions. I'll go with one here. What would be your top 2 or 3 alerts that you would recommend setting up?
Oh, okay. I would recommend setting up when a new, if I pop back into alerting over here, I would set up for when a new error group occurs, just so you can capture all those new ones that pop into place that you may not have insight on previously, and wanting to understand where the specifically new ones are coming from a latest release, for example, actually, which we do have a filter for that, being able to monitor by only latest deployments. So that could be one option. Another
It's also
option.
worth noting, sorry, Sumitra, just in case this person's not a Raygun power user. So an error group is when we have looked at the errors that are coming through and sort of rolled it up into a unique, we believe this is a unique bug. So when we say a new error group, it's kind of like saying when we discover an entirely new fault. So rather than an old thing still occurring, this one's brand new.
Yes, definitely. And I think that's just super useful in terms of being able to understand, like, is my new release of a new feature going to be impacting the customers in a bad way, and in terms of the receiving too many bugs and not actually able to complete their full flow,
Yep.
or actually are we doing completely fine? Yeah, I think that would be one. And I feel like Slack, because we use Slack here, I think that's quite useful. Just getting that direct message instead of having to go through certain other aspects. But if you don't use Slack, obviously we have other actions as well in place.
Yep. You can also add multiple filters in there too, and that's what I mean about this being a bit of a workflow engine rather than purely an alerting one, is where you'll be able to build and continue to build more and more complex rules around here to ultimately, with a product set like Rayguns, a huge part of helping the customer is to try and get rid of as much of the noise as possible and just tell you when something important has happened. And so a lot of these sort of capabilities and features are about how do we not annoy you when you shouldn't be annoyed and let you know when something is important. And we continually work on that. Cool. I've got another question here, unless you had something else to add as an example.
I can add another one. So I think another pretty important and significant one on my end would be to be able to make sure that the homepage of our company's public website is working well, because that is where we get a lot of traffic. So I would definitely have a setup for being able to have a condition for page or XHR performance changes, and making sure that the specific metric that you have outlined for when you want a successful page to be loading at, I would say like in 0.2 seconds. That's how long I want my page to be loading for. I would have an alert set up if there's something that goes over that. It's just so I can understand like what happened in this place and time, and have my new changes again, have they made a pretty poor rating in terms of the feature itself. Yeah.
Yep. No, absolutely. We've got a couple other questions here. I'll put up. I think I know the answer to this one, but I'll ask anyway. If I receive an alert and it pops up into Teams, do the comments appear in Raygun? So on an error group, I can put comments, but if I put a comment into the Teams one, does it automatically go over into Raygun or not yet?
No, I think that might be referring to our Slack app level feature, which that one has that autonomy to be able to do so. But for MS Teams, I don't believe it
Not
is.
yet.
Yeah.
Not yet. Yep. Cool. That makes sense. And that's really starting to bring us to a bit of a close here. If there are any other questions, but feel free to ask them. We can also answer them offline. If you send them late or you're watching a recording of this, we're always happy to answer them if you ping us directly. I want to wrap by saying thank you so much for joining me today, Sumitra. I've been saving one feedback point here right for the end from a person called Richard, saying, well done, Sumitra. I'm really proud of how far you've grown at Raygun. And,
Oh.
quite honestly, that's how I feel too. I get the luxury of, quite often bringing in super talented young people into our business and watching them really grow. And it's been a real joy over the last few years seeing you absolutely bloom as both an engineer, a people leader, and a crafter of fine software. So thank you very much, and thanks for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much, AD. I really appreciate it. And again, I just want to do a quick plug as well. Like, just Reagan in general has helped me in terms of being able to get my career progression where it is today. And I don't think I would be able to move as quick as I did if I wasn't at Reagan. And having just autonomy here and having that power to do so, that's just how I've been able to get to this spot. So, yeah, really appreciate it.
If only we'd known you were an Eminem rap listening, car stealing GTA player at the interview. But
And the chip I put on myself, which is quite surprising.
Awesome.
Like, my favorite color is like pink as well. So
we'll all know who's stealing them. Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining Sumitra and I today. Thanks for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Until next time, we'll see you at the next Founder and Friends. Bye.
Bye, everyone.